Bonnie Lipton was all smiles as she eased her BMW onto the interstate in Atlanta. She knew she'd arrive home a couple of hours later than expected, but she'd simply blame it on the notorious Atlanta traffic. Nick had made the delay in leaving well worth the time she lost. He was almost 10 years younger than Bonnie and was an exceptional partner. He was attractive, intelligent, a great conversationalist, as well as young enough to recover quickly. Bonnie's thoughts then turned to her husband, Ron. He had just turned 44 and lacked Nick's energy. He relied on his experience and understanding of Bonnie's body to make their intimate life very satisfying. It was always comforting to go home and sleep in his arms after spending time with Nick. She realized that she had the best of both worlds, and her smile grew even wider. The farther she traveled from Atlanta, the less she thought about Nick. He was excited, but Ron and her daughter, Casey, were the people she truly loved. Bonnie wanted to spend time with them now that her desires had been fully and deeply fulfilled. She understood her moods. She'd be patient and affectionate to Ron when she arrived home. He was a good man and an exceptional husband. Casey was athletic and intelligent. She had plenty of friends from her sports and school activities. It wasn't unusual to have 2 or 3 of her girlfriends hanging around the house on weekends. Bonnie enjoyed her interactions with the young women, and they seemed to look up to her as a role model. Bonnie made sure she was always well-dressed. She held a prestigious position with an architectural firm and was well-respected in the community. She and Ron were well-known individually and as a couple. Ron now managed his family's thriving construction company. He was never too busy to attend all of Casey's events at school. Bonnie always enjoyed sitting next to Ron as they watched their daughter play or perform. She knew more than a few of the other fathers liked to glance at her discreetly, but she also noticed how many of the mothers looked at Ron like they were circling prey. Even with Bonnie sitting next to him, women often found reasons to chat and flirt with him. Her charming husband never seemed to notice, but it was all very clear to Bonnie. After hours on the road, Bonnie pulled into her garage and noticed her husband's pickup was gone. That was unusual and unexpected. Bonnie felt her mood starting to shift. The least her husband could do was be home to welcome her after a tiring business conference and the long drive back. The house was quiet as Bonnie made her way through to the master bedroom. She couldn't quite pinpoint why, but a sinking feeling began to grow deep in her stomach. It was almost dinner time, and no one was home. The next day was Thursday, which meant Ron had work and Casey had school. That meant they should be back soon, so Bonnie unpacked her bag before heading for a shower. As she puzzled over Ron and Casey's unexplained absence, Bonnie remembered that her phone had been turned off. It had been off since dinner the night before. She had been lost in thought on the drive home and hadn't realized she hadn't received any calls. Ron might be upset because she hadn't called to thank him for the string of pearls. She had completely forgotten about him the night before as Nick had consumed her thoughts. As she finished drying her hair, she turned her phone back on. Ron once again patted himself on the back for his simple yet brilliant plan to surprise and delight his wife. He had known about her scheduled conference in Atlanta for months. Bonnie attended these conferences twice a year. As luck would have it, this particular conference was scheduled on their 20th wedding anniversary. A few weeks earlier, Ron had been approached about building a large vacation home for a family from Atlanta. Once the business part of his meeting wrapped up and Ron felt comfortable with the client, Boyd Drake, he brought up an idea that had recently formed in his mind. "Boyd, my wife will be attending a conference in downtown Atlanta on the 10th of next month, which happens to be our anniversary. I'd like to surprise her and her co-worker with a nice dinner at a good restaurant near her hotel. To top it off, I bought a pearl necklace that I'd love to have delivered to her at the table while she's enjoying dinner." "My daughter's the one to help you with that," Boyd said. "She's in college now and knows all the best spots in the city. She could make sure the necklace gets into your wife's hands. Sounds like you're hoping for a warm welcome when she gets back home. Why not drive up to Atlanta with her and deliver it yourself?" "I've offered in the past, but Bonnie insists she's too busy to spend time with me. She'll have a late dinner and then rush back to her hotel so she can rest up for the next day. I have responsibilities here, and driving all that way just to be ignored doesn't seem worth it," Ron explained. "I've got another idea," Ron added. "How about I buy your daughter and a friend of her choice dinner, if she'd be willing to sit at a nearby table and send me a real-time video on Facebook? I'd love to see Bonnie's reaction when she opens the box with the necklace." "I'll give you my daughter's number, and you can call or text her to set it up," Boyd replied. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to help make this happen. Ron had several pizzas delivered to his house for the gathering he was hosting in honor of his 20th anniversary. He had invited his parents, Bonnie's parents, his brother and sister-in-law, along with Bonnie's younger divorced sister. They were all excited to watch Bonnie live as he surprised her with the anniversary gift. Ron's 16-year-old daughter Casey was also there with a couple of her friends. Everything was set so they could view the video on the large screen TV. Boyd's daughter is going to sit as close to Bonnie as possible without raising any suspicion. She'll be sending the video to me through Facebook Live. She even paid a server to deliver the wrapped gift after Bonnie and her co-worker Sue placed their orders. We'll be able to see Bonnie's reaction in real time. This is going to be the best anniversary possible considering we're apart, Ron said with a pleased grin. I've set it up so we won't hear any audio, so feel free to make comments about what a great idea this was. Who's that guy with Mom? Asked Casey as Bonnie came into view, holding hands with a younger, good-looking man. Didn't you say she'd be with Sue? I don't know who he is, Ron admitted, frowning. He seems like quite a close friend. Bonnie's father let out a disgruntled harumph and gave Ron a skeptical look. As the couple sat down at the restaurant table, everyone gathered around the TV could still easily read the conversation between Bonnie and the unknown man, despite the lack of sound. Husband to pay for our dinner tonight, the man said with a smirk. I'll do my best to make this anniversary unforgettable, at least for you. I'll make it even better than your honeymoon. You'd better order the steak, Bonnie replied with a sly grin. You're going to need your energy. My honeymoon was legendary. Really? The man teased. Did you have someone waiting in the wings back then, or did your husband actually manage to impress you? Ron did an excellent job, thank you for asking, Bonnie quipped with a grin. You're the only lover I've had in the last 20 years. Well, besides Ron, of course. Lucky for me he's been slowing down, the man responded with a chuckle. The good news is, tonight you'll have a far better anniversary than most women. I'll make sure of that. Maybe we've seen enough, Bonnie's sister said nervously. This isn't right. Bonnie has no idea we're watching. Why don't you turn it off, Ron? We don't want to miss Bonnie's reaction when she gets her necklace, do we? Ron replied, his face flushed but determined. Let's stick around a bit longer. As the couple placed their orders, everyone could hear Bonnie call her companion Nick. When the server took their menus, another server appeared with a beautifully wrapped box. Look, Ron must have sent an anniversary gift to the restaurant, Bonnie exclaimed with delight, eagerly unwrapping the package. Isn't it gorgeous? Bonnie beamed, admiring the string of pearls. Could you help me put it on? Of course, just lean back toward me, Nick said, carefully fastening the necklace. As he finished, he slyly let his hands graze over Bonnie's chest. Your husband is so thoughtful. You're lucky to have such a handsome man, an older woman at a nearby table remarked. Right on both counts, Nick chimed in with a smirk. She's got a thoughtful husband and a good-looking boyfriend. Bonnie shot Nick a glare, but the older women nearby just laughed at his comment. I gave you a pearl necklace last night, and personally, I think it suited you much better than this one, Nick joked, leaning in to kiss Bonnie on the lips. That's the difference between a husband and a lover, Bonnie replied with a sly smile. Husbands give us jewelry, lovers give us satisfaction. I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this, whispered the young redhead, who had to be Boyd's daughter, as she quickly pulled her phone away. I should have stopped earlier, but I was so shocked I didn't know what to do. I'm really sorry it turned out like this. I'll erase everything from my phone. I have to go. The TV went blank, leaving the room in stunned silence. One of Casey's friends was the first to speak up. It's getting late. We should probably head out. See you at school tomorrow. If I even show up, Casey replied, her eyes filling with tears. Dad, can I go with my friends tonight? I think I need to be with them right now. Of course, sweetheart, I understand. We'll talk tomorrow. Drive safe, girls, Ron replied, his voice barely above a whisper, his throat dry. I don't know what to say, Bonnie's mother began. I think we might have misunderstood things. Bonnie loves you, Ron, and she would do anything for Casey. Don't do anything hasty. The rest of the guests murmured similar reassurances as they quietly discussed the situation. After a few minutes, Ron made a decision. I need time to process all of this. Please head out and give me some space to think. Once everyone had left, Ron pulled out his luggage and began packing. Bonnie was shocked at the flood of messages and missed calls that greeted her when she finally turned her phone back on. As she scrolled through the texts, her stomach sank. Her mother and sister had bombarded her with questions about Nick, demanding to know who he was and why she seemed so close to him. They claimed she had broken Ron's heart and mentioned how devastated Casey was. Each had sent more than a dozen texts, and yet there were none from Ron. How did they even know about Nick, and how much did they actually know? Where were Ron and Casey? Bonnie's mind raced as she tried to figure out how she could fix the mess she was in. She needed to find out exactly what Ron knew, and what he might only be guessing. The first step was to talk to her family and gauge just how deep the trouble went. "Mom, it's me," Bonnie said, trying to sound as calm as possible. "I forgot I had my phone off last night. I saw you've been trying to reach me. Is everything okay?" "Okay. Only if you think losing your husband, humiliating your daughter, embarrassing your parents, and acting like a total fool is okay. But hey, I guess it doesn't bother you much, since you were busy enjoying a certain pearl necklace from your boyfriend," her mother shot back, clearly furious. "Mom, Ron gave me a string of pearls for our anniversary," Bonnie replied, trying to sound reasonable. "Why would that upset you?" Her mother let out a bitter laugh. "Your father and I have seen enough old movies to know exactly what your boyfriend meant when he said that. We know what a pearl necklace really means." "Mom," Bonnie gasped, her heart racing. "What made you think I'd ever do something like that? Why do you even believe I have a boyfriend?" she asked, her fear growing as a knot tightened in her stomach. "Don't play games with me. I'm not stupid," snapped her mother angrily. "Ron had a group of us over to watch you open his 20th anniversary gift at the restaurant. He'd made a reservation for you and a co-worker, Sue, I think her name was supposed to be. We saw everything, Bonnie. Your husband treats you like a queen and you repay him with this? Husbands give jewelry, lovers give... Well, you know what you said. That summed it all up." "You heard me say that?" Bonnie was in shock. How is that even possible? "Ron had some friend's daughter stream the whole thing live from her phone," her mother explained, her voice heavy with disappointment. "He wanted us all to witness your reaction to his gift. We were even going to call you and wish you a happy anniversary, but now? Well, it seems like this might be your last anniversary. With Ron, at least. Maybe you and your friend can make new plans once everything blows over." "Mom, you know I love Ron. That guy means nothing to me. It was just a distraction, something to do." "Conferences like this get so boring," Bonnie pleaded, trying to justify her actions. "Oh well, that clears everything up," her mother responded sarcastically. "I'm sure Ron will be so relieved to hear that you weren't acting like a loose woman. You were just bored." "What? You left your crossword puzzle at home?" "Calling me names isn't going to help, Mom. How am I supposed to convince Ron that he's the only man I love?" Bonnie asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "You haven't even convinced me," her mother replied coldly. "So I'd say convincing Ron will be a lot harder. Watching you with that man was one of the most painful things I've ever witnessed. I can't imagine how much worse it must have been for Ron." After hanging up, Bonnie tried to wrap her mind around the mess she had created. Her entire family had seen and heard her flirty, suggestive conversation with Nick over dinner. The more she thought about it, the more she realized just how deep she was in trouble. She decided to call her daughter next. "Casey, where are you?" Bonnie asked softly when her daughter finally answered. "I'm with Morgan. She's been trying to help me deal with the fact that our family's falling apart," Casey replied, her voice heavy with sadness. "We're not falling apart, Casey. Please come home now so we can talk this through," Bonnie said, trying to maintain control. "Where's your father?" "He's moved to the lake cottage," Casey answered. "I don't think he wants to see you, Mom. He was so excited last night when he invited everyone over to watch you open your anniversary gift. But instead of Sue, you showed up with him. It broke Dad's heart." "Please come home," Bonnie pleaded again as she struggled to think of what she could say or do to make things right with Ron. After hanging up, feeling a growing sense of dread, when she entered Ron's study, she noticed his laptop and several file folders were missing.
His closet had been completely cleared out, leaving it barren. She wandered aimlessly. The absence of photos that included her struck her particularly hard, as if Ron had owed. Desperate to distract herself, Bonnie decided to start preparing dinner for Casey. By the time Casey came home, Bonnie had made a simple meal. Casey, however, barely spoke, only answering when directly asked, and her responses were short and cold. Bonnie understood that her daughter was hurt and angry, but she still clung to the hope that time might heal the wounds she had caused.
The next morning, as the sun rose, Bonnie drove to their lake cabin, hoping to find Ron. When she walked inside, she saw him slumped over on the small sofa, clearly uncomfortable and surrounded by empty drink cans scattered across the floor. "Ron? Sweetheart, we need to talk," Bonnie said softly, gently trying to wake him. "Please, can you wake up?" Ron slowly opened his eyes and groaned. He gradually stood up and headed to the bathroom without saying a word. Bonnie took this opportunity to brew some coffee while she waited for her husband to return. A few minutes later, a freshly showered Ron walked back into the kitchen, just as Bonnie placed a mug in front of him. Bonnie hoped that Ron would initiate the difficult conversation, but that hope soon faded. It was clear he had no intention of starting the discussion. "Ron, I'm truly sorry about what happened. I love the pearls. They were a wonderful gift that I'll always cherish. I wish I had known you were broadcasting everything to the family. It would have been nice if you had mentioned that," she said, trying to break the ice. "Forget you," Ron replied curtly, his voice laced with frustration over Bonnie's attempt to paint him as the offender. Bonnie was taken aback and hurt by Ron's response. In all their years together, he had never spoken to her so disrespectfully. It was a clear sign of the pain she had inflicted. "That's not helpful," Bonnie responded calmly, though her heart was racing. "Please tell me what I need to do to make this right. You're the only man I've ever loved, and that hasn't changed. We can work through this together. Help me out here. What exactly is the issue you want to resolve?" Ron asked, his tone steady but strained. "Is the issue that I surprised you with an anniversary gift in a nice restaurant where I made reservations for you and a friend? Is it that I arranged for a client's daughter to send a live video of your reaction? Is it that I thought you'd appreciate a gift? Explain to me what the problem is, so I know just what you're talking about." "You know what the issue is," Bonnie insisted. "You saw me with Nick last night at the restaurant. I know you have dinner with other people from time to time. Why do you think that's a problem?" Ron questioned, his expression revealing both hurt and confusion. "You know perfectly well why it's a problem. I told you I was going to dinner with Sue, but I actually went with Nick. You overheard our conversation and discovered we've been intimate. That's the issue we need to address. Just to clarify, is the problem that I, along with your entire family, overheard your conversation? Or is the problem that you've been unfaithful to me?" Ron asked, his voice steady but filled with tension. "My behavior is the problem," Bonnie admitted, her face flushing as she realized that being defensive wouldn't help her at this moment. "You were simply trying to be kind to me on our anniversary. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay, we're making progress. Now tell me why you've been unfaithful, how long it's been going on, and how many men are involved," Ron demanded, his expression hardening. "Is Casey my biological daughter? Could the mailman be her father?" "There's no need to be crude or insulting," Bonnie stated, her heart racing as she felt the weight of his accusations. "Of course Casey is your daughter. Nick is the only man I've been with since before we started dating. Your comment about how many men I've been with and implying the mailman is Casey's father is just plain cruel." "I'm having some trouble following your reasoning here," Ron countered. "You admit to being unfaithful, yet you want to draw a line regarding how much you've strayed? You expect me to be polite and understanding, not to mention naive, while you claim to be a one-man affair? You're proud of the fact that you haven't cheated on me very often. By the way, how long have you been seeing Nick and how often? You didn't mention those important details while rejecting the idea of being the town bicycle," he added, his tone unforgiving. "This was the third conference we've been intimate together," Bonnie admitted, tears welling in her eyes as she began to grasp the extent of Ron's anger and humiliation. "Other than you, he's the only man I've been with since we got married." "That would be 2 nights together for each of the 3 conferences," stated Ron. "Did you ever get intimate with him anywhere else?" "No," proclaimed Bonnie. "It was a total of 6 times and I deeply regret it. I owe you an apology." "You're telling me a young stud like Nick was only able to be with you once a night?" questioned Ron. "He never had intimacy with you more than once in a night?" "What difference does that make?" asked a bewildered Bonnie. "We probably were together 3 times each night." "Now for the big question," announced Ron. "Why did you choose to be intimate with another man? Was our lovemaking so unrewarding, so mundane, so pathetic that you needed to find a younger, more appealing partner? Of course not. I was bored and he pursued me relentlessly. I was weak. It was never about you or our intimacy. It was about my vanity, maybe a midlife crisis. He means nothing to me, I swear. I see. You were intimate with a man who meant nothing to you, repeated Ron. Have you been intimate with Mr. Jenkins? The guy who lives down the street and wears those ridiculous shirts? Asked a very confused Bonnie. Of course not. I hardly know him, but I find him repulsive. So he means nothing to you? Continued Ron. You just told me you are intimate with men you don't love and who mean nothing to you. Jenkins fits that description, so why don't you share intimacy with him? I didn't say I sleep with every man who means nothing to me, explained a distraught Bonnie. I was with Nick because he was good-looking, suave, and successful. He pursued me. Yeah. You're telling me you'll only be intimate with good-looking, successful men who chase after you? Other than a few guys like that, you're a faithful wife. If you don't love the men you are intimate with, doesn't it follow that you don't love me? No, I'm telling you I made a horrible mistake and it'll never happen again, stated Bonnie with emotion. I love you, but not Nick. How do I know that? Asked Ron gently. You promised to be faithful to me at our wedding and a few other times over the years. You're a beautiful woman. Good-looking, successful men will always be pursuing you. I can't trust you. I can't even give you the great intimacy you seem to enjoy so much. Don't ever think that, Ron. I love being intimate with you. It's special, and it makes me feel loved, replied Bonnie. What did Nick make you feel that you kept going back to him? Asked Ron softly. Dirty, used, different from a mother or a wife. It was the wrongness that drew me in. It wasn't love. Did he have intimacy with you in a way I haven't? Asked a subdued Ron. Why does that matter? It's you I love, protested Bonnie in obvious embarrassment before adding, You know I wouldn't let anyone have that part of me. Not even you. I have a lot to consider. You're standing there telling me you love me, and not him. But you haven't gone that far with him. Yet. It's hard for me to accept you'd do so much more for a man who means nothing to you than for a man you love, reasoned Ron. You haven't indicated you wanted this in a long time. I wasn't against it so much as I thought you'd lost interest, protested Bonnie, even as she realized how inadequate she must have sounded. Yeah, what married guy wants that from his wife, especially when she gives it out so freely? You told me on our honeymoon I would be the only man you loved, recalled Ron. You and Nick must have had quite a few laughs at my expense. It wasn't like that. He never talked about you. I would have never allowed it, insisted Bonnie. You seem to forget I heard a few minutes of your conversation. The man spoke poorly of me several times, and you went along with it. Remember how I'm slowing down? He gave you a better 20th anniversary than most wives ever get. You never disagreed, did you? Why are we even wasting our time here? Demanded Ron suddenly. You found someone new. I accept that. It seems like you should as well. Why pretend you want to stay married? It's pretty obvious you didn't like being my wife, and we won't even talk about the lack of intimacy. You're beautiful, successful, and intelligent, while I bring nothing to the table. It was only a matter of time before you looked for something better. Congratulations on finding it. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Ron, we can't let this discussion end so badly. We have to talk it out and find a way back, Bonnie pleaded tearfully. You can have your lawyer speak to my lawyer. We're done, Bonnie. I'm going to file for divorce. You've left me no choice. Bonnie went to work that day only to have an irate Sue corner her by the break room. Why was Ron asking me about going with you to Atlanta for that conference? You know full well I stopped going to those after you decided to spend nights with that man from the Chicago office. I don't want you using me as a cover for your actions. Ron called you? What did you tell him? Questioned Bonnie dejectedly. The truth, I haven't gone to the last two conferences. I got the impression you told him we were sharing a room and spending time at the conference together, complained Sue. I don't appreciate being used like that. It won't be a problem again. Ron found out about this trip. I think he's going to file for divorce, confessed Bonnie. What other outcome could you possibly expect? Demanded Sue. No decent man can accept that level of disrespect. I was too foolish and self-centered to even think about Ron finding out, answered Bonnie candidly. He's moved out. Don't you think you made your choice when you were with that man from Chicago? Asked Sue a little more gently. I'm sorry you lost Ron, but I warned you it would happen if you kept it up. I wasn't the one who told him, if that's what you're thinking. I know that, Sue. I owe you an apology. I abused your friendship. I wish I had listened to you, but I was so arrogant and entitled. I don't deserve a man like Ron. Ron had taken the day off from work after learning Bonnie was being unfaithful. He was determined to move all of his belongings to his lake house before Bonnie made it home. He had no interest in listening to her reasons or excuses for her actions. He was sickened when he considered life without Bonnie, but he knew he could never forgive her cold-hearted disregard for his feelings, as well as her ambivalence toward fidelity and respect. Her surprise visit the next morning had simply exposed the huge emotional gap that separated them. She had said nothing that could help him find it in his heart to forgive her. He made an appointment with a lawyer for the next afternoon. He was preparing to leave the office for his meeting with a divorce lawyer the next day when he was notified of a new email. It was from Bonnie. He considered whether he should read it or simply delete it. After an internal discussion, he opened the email. In her typical fashion, Bonnie had addressed the problem head-on. He felt nothing but despair as he read her message. Ron, I know I really messed up this time. I was foolish enough to think you'd never find out, so my actions would never hurt you. I was wrong. Lying and being unfaithful will destroy a marriage, even if one partner is unaware that it's happening. You deserve so much better. I have never wanted anything as much in my life as I want you to forgive me. But I will not dispute any action you take regarding our marriage. I forfeited the right to be involved in your decision. I love you and wish you the very best. You are a fine man, husband and father. This is entirely on me. I accept that truth, although I hate that I did this to us. You may not believe it, but I love you, and I always will. Bonnie. Ron fought back the tears as he read Bonnie's admission and plea for forgiveness. It was like her to accept the blame for her actions once she had time to consider the situation. She was a strong woman who demanded the best from others as well as herself. He felt empty and could see no reason to respond to the email. He had nothing left to say. After the morning Bonnie went to see him at the lake cabin, Casey was her only source of information regarding Ron. That Friday afternoon, Casey called Bonnie to tell her she would be going to her father's cabin for the weekend. Ron would bring her back home Sunday evening. Bonnie realized that was how her life was going to be moving forward. She spent a miserable weekend thinking about how badly she had messed up her life. She had no idea how she could fix her mistake, or even if it was possible to fix. Had she totally destroyed her once happy marriage? Casey looked quite glum when she came home Sunday evening. Dad's decided to get a divorce. He can't live with someone who's lost all respect for him. I saw him cry a few times this weekend. I'd never seen that before in my whole life. Do you have any idea how much you hurt him? I guess your friend must be a lot better than Dad. He's not my friend, and he can't hold a candle to your father, replied a shaken Bonnie. It was a huge mistake, and I deeply regret it. Your father is the best man I've ever known. Forgive both Dad and me for being skeptical, retorted Casey. That wasn't the first time you were unfaithful, was it? You've been betraying us for years, haven't you? Bonnie realized it was time she stopped lying to her family. I was intimate with him at the 2 conferences before this last one. It was wrong, and I apologize. Was it wrong? That's an understatement, don't you think, Mother? Insisted Casey angrily. You betrayed Dad in the worst way possible. Didn't you swear to be faithful when you married him? Did you have your fingers crossed so it wouldn't count? I know you're upset with me, but not as much as I am. Your father is a wonderful man and a great dad. You know that. What I did doesn't mean I think less of him. I was very foolish, admitted Bonnie sadly. Whatever, declared Casey before marching off to her room. Bonnie's life settled into a new normal. She and Casey were barely civil to each other. Work became her lifeline. Everything there remained normal, except for Sue's cold attitude toward her. She attended Casey's school events, but usually sat alone unless her mother went with her. It was the only time she got to see Ron. He always sat as far from her as he reasonably could, and other parents quickly noticed. It soon became common knowledge that they were getting divorced. Bonnie occasionally heard fathers, both single and married, make inappropriate comments and suggestions. It was quite apparent that word of Bonnie's betrayal had spread through the community. Ron threw himself into his business. That was the silver lining in the entire situation. The irony was that Bonnie would be getting half of the business. His lawyer had proposed a few tactics that would have decreased Bonnie's share of the business, but Ron refused to listen. Bonnie worked alongside me and even contributed a share of her paycheck to keep us afloat back when we first took over the family business, insisted Ron. There'd be nothing to split up if it hadn't been for her. I'm not going to deny the facts. Bonnie was quite surprised when her lawyer explained to her how Ron was conceding half his ownership of the business to her. Ron's best friend, Dan, had bought into the company years prior when Ron was experiencing a cash flow crisis. Dan was a silent partner who owned a third of the company. Ron conceding half of their shared ownership to Bonnie left him in a vulnerable position. He owned and controlled only a third of the business. Tell Ron this is too much, insisted Bonnie to her lawyer. He's the one who dedicated his time and energy to the business. If he insists on giving me a share, tell him I'll settle for 1/10 of what we own. He'll retain control without any possible dispute. Ron was nothing if not stubborn. When the snow melted the following spring, Bonnie was once again a single woman, as well as a third owner in Lipton Enterprises. She had been. Unable to even persuade Ron to speak with her on the phone. He had completely shut her out of his life. Casey told Bonnie she wanted to spend the summer between her junior and senior year of high school at the lake cabin with her father. Bonnie knew it was yet another effort by Casey to express her displeasure, but she accepted that she had earned her daughter's contempt. For his part, Ron was delighted. He had plans drawn up to almost double the size of the cabin. Owning a construction company made it relatively easy to complete the renovations by the end of July. It was now a 3-bedroom lake home. Each bedroom had its own bath and a good view of the lake. It was a thoroughly modernized and comfortable home. Ron held an open house for his friends and neighbors at the lake on the first weekend in August. Casey's friends were all invited. One of them brought an older cousin, who Ron could not help but notice. She was a striking blonde who filled out her fairly modest 2-piece bathing suit very well. As the day wore on, Ron found the young woman near him much of the time. She laughed at his jokes and flirted with him at every opportunity. "So, Dad, are you trying to get into Patty's little bikini bottoms?" asked Casey at one point when the two found themselves alone in the kitchen. "Of course not," protested Ron. "She can't be more than 25, and I haven't decided to start dating." "She's 27 and seems pretty interested in you," replied Casey with a knowing smile. "She's been asking how long you've been single, how old you are, what you do for a living. All the stuff women want to know about potential partners." "I just met her today," replied Ron. "Don't even think about bringing up the word marriage to me. I tried it once and that was enough." "I'm not implying anything other than she seems interested. I wouldn't mind if you dated her. She's really nice and you need someone to help you move on from Mom. From what I've seen, Patty isn't in any hurry to get married. I think she's focused on her career right now. That doesn't mean she wouldn't enjoy some companionship." "Thanks for enlightening me," joked Ron to his daughter. "That girl is way too attractive to be interested in an old guy like me. But thanks for the vote of confidence. I appreciate your faith in me." Bonnie's company occupied the top 2 floors of an office building in the business district. A very popular Italian bistro was located at the end of the same block. She usually had lunch there every Thursday with several of her friends from work. Because she kept an informal lunch schedule, she often saw the same people eating at the same time. Bonnie and her workmates became friendly with employees of several other companies located in her building. One afternoon, the bistro was unusually crowded, and Bonnie's group was unable to secure a table. One of the women from Benson Advertising, which was located on the 2nd floor of her building, invited her group to join them at a large table. They quickly accepted the invitation. Once everyone introduced themselves, the conversation began. One of the women in the advertising group was especially attractive and very friendly. Bonnie found herself enjoying the good humor of the younger woman. She smiled as the other ladies began teasing her. "We don't all have a rich partner with a big house on Lake Henry," teased the woman Bonnie knew as Mary. "It must be nice waking up with the morning sun reflecting off the lake." "It is," agreed the younger woman, "especially with a good-looking guy by my side. It's a real chore getting out of bed." "If he's the guy who picked you up after work on Thursday, I can see why it would be a challenge," stated another woman. "He looked a little older than you, but seemed to be in good shape. He had all his hair and was quite attractive." "Ron's all of that and more," offered the young woman, smiling broadly. "He's a genuinely nice guy and very caring." Bonnie's friend immediately asked the very question Bonnie didn't want to even consider. You aren't talking about Ron Lipton, are you? Do you know Ron? Asked the young beauty before adding, You have to admit he's a good-looking guy. He's a great guy, but he used to be Bonnie's husband, revealed her coworker. I think we should change the subject. Don't be so dramatic, insisted Bonnie as she leaned toward the younger woman and offered her hand. I'm Bonnie Lipton. I didn't catch your name. Patty Lawson. Ron said his ex-wife was beautiful, but I thought he was probably blinded by love, admitted Patty. It turns out he didn't do you justice. I hope you aren't upset that I'm living with Ron now. I certainly can't blame you or him for that matter, answered Bonnie truthfully. You're a lovely young woman with an amazing figure. I can easily see why Ron would be attracted to you. I do wonder why Casey never said anything about you to me. I can't speak for Casey, except to say you've done a wonderful job raising your daughter. She's very intelligent and thoughtful as well as beautiful, like her mother. I enjoy when she visits us, concluded Patty. That evening, Bonnie questioned Casey as they ate dinner. Why didn't you tell me your father had a lovely girlfriend to move in with him? That's something I would have been interested in. Truthfully, Mom, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I know how you feel about Dad, replied Casey. I'm still upset that you were unfaithful to him, but I don't want to make you miserable because of your poor choices. Patty is really good for Dad. He finally seems happy again. This may surprise you, but I'm pleased to hear that Ron's happy. He's a fine man and deserves to be with a woman who loves him, even if it's not me. I don't think she loves Dad, but she does like him a lot. She's made it clear she's putting her career first for the next few years. She wants to make it big in marketing. Are you going to start dating, Mom? Are you in touch with the guy from the conferences? Do you think you may get together with him? Asked Casey. Nick? He's not the kind of man I'd look for in a relationship, confessed Bonnie. He's shallow, somewhat crude, selfish, and conceited. I never thought of him as more than a diversion. It turned out he diverted my life into chaos, although I knew what I was doing. I shouldn't blame him for my weakness. Are you interested in anyone? Questioned Casey. You're still beautiful. I've noticed how some of the fathers and teachers look at you and go out of their way to be nice to you at my school events. Honestly, I think Ron ruined me for other men, replied Bonnie with a sad smile. The reason for our divorce is known by most of the people in the area. It makes women sympathize with your father, while men think of me as an easy score. I suppose it was easy for Nick, but I won't be making that mistake again. I just don't understand how you could have cheated on Dad when you love him so much, wondered Casey. He always treated you with love and respect. What went wrong? I've been asking myself that very question, admitted Bonnie. I think I began to take your father for granted. I knew he loved me. I was very secure in that love. It somehow translated into trying another man, maybe because I thought I had a safety net at home. Ron was my anchor. He was always there for me. I stupidly assumed he always would be. I could stray a little without him knowing and still have my devoted husband at home. I pray you find a man like Ron when you're ready for a family and use my experience as a cautionary tale. Never take more than you give in a relationship. Be loyal, faithful, and honest. If you find yourself considering anything that could harm your relationship, discuss it with him. I've shown you what happens when you lie and cheat. Bonnie occasionally bumped into Patty at lunchtime. She was surprised by how much she liked the woman and embarrassed at how eager she was to hear any news regarding Ron. Casey was reluctant to share too much about her father with Bonnie. Being his daughter, she wasn't privy to some of the more personal aspects of his life. However, Patty was quite willing to discuss Ron with her friends. Bonnie, it's pretty obvious you still love Ron, observed Patty one day as the two women ate lunch. He never says anything negative about you, but it's clear you hurt him badly. I'm not here to judge you, but I have to say I'd never cheat when I'm in a relationship. It's hard for me to believe you did. Everything I see and hear from you indicates you love and respect him. I'd urge you to remember that when the flame of passion dims and everyday life bogs you down, responded Bonnie. I lost my way and I paid the price. Love isn't always wild intimacy and great vacations. Sometimes it's about deciding when to have the septic pumped or what color to paint the house. It becomes mundane, but that's normal. Ron is an honest businessman, a considerate friend, and a great father. I'll always love him, but but I betrayed him in the worst way a wife can. I've learned from it. I guess I'm a little too late to be smart. Last night I told Ron I was accepting a position in Seattle and would be leaving in 2 weeks. It's a great opportunity for me. I made it clear from the start that I was placing my career first, but I could tell my news upset him, revealed Patty. I'm sharing this with you so you understand what he's going through and can possibly help him if he gets down. He really is a great guy. He's just not my forever guy. I'm sure he'll miss you a great deal. Ron doesn't do things on a whim. If he asked you to live with him, it meant he thought very highly of you as a person, your beauty notwithstanding. That said, he's a strong man. I tested that strength, but he survived. He actually upgraded, Bonnie said with a small grin. He'll miss you, but he's a great catch, and I doubt his bed will be empty for long. Yeah, that's why I'm giving you a heads up, replied Patty with a smile of her own. What you do with the information is up to you. It was just a week later, when Ron's best friend and silent partner Dan asked Bonnie to meet him for lunch at the bistro. The dining area was crowded, but they found a small table off to the side. After the usual greetings and formalities, Dan brought up the reason for his request to meet with Bonnie. You know that tract of land Ron bought on Route 21 not far from the river? I have a buyer willing to pay almost $2 million for it. Ron bought it for a song. The profit would be huge. Your third would be well over $500,000. Ron said that land was a steal and would be worth a lot someday. Is he going to sell it? Asked Bonnie as she wondered how she figured into the discussion. That's the problem, replied Dan. He says he thinks it'll be worth more to the company if he offers it for a long-term lease. He'd have it written into the contract that his company would build the structure the lessee required for its business. That sounds like Ron, admitted Bonnie with a smile as she thought about how business-savvy he was. I'm sure he's done the math and his plan will make more profit in the long term. What's the problem? I think we should make a quick profit and sell the land. Planning 10 and 15 years ahead is great, but I'd like to have the money now. You own a third of the company. I own a third. Together we could insist Ron accept the offer and then pay us our share of the profits. Ron wouldn't be hurt. Hell, he'd get $500,000 cash to soothe any ruffled feathers. Bonnie felt her anger building as she listened to Dan make his pitch. You're asking me to betray Ron's trust? You think the money means more to me than Ron's ruffled feathers, as you call them? Let me tell you something. Ron would view this as a complete and utter betrayal by his wife and best friend. It would be the worst thing you could possibly do to him. Worse than his wife being unfaithful with some young buck at a conference? Taunted Dan. You're his ex-wife for a reason. You've already betrayed him. He divorced your cheating self. This is a chance to get a little payback and a nice chunk of change at the same time, reasoned Dan. That loyal wife stuff won't fly. We both know that description doesn't fit you. I did betray Ron, I admit it, responded Bonnie in a controlled fury. I was stupid and selfish, but I never meant to hurt him. He's better than both of us, and deserves far better business partners than either of us will ever be. That said, I will never betray him again. I'd rather lose my last penny than hurt Ron like this. I proved I was a lousy wife, and you've just proven yourself to be a poor friend and partner. Ron will control my share of the company, as long as I draw a breath. In fact, I'll have a new will drawn up to be certain Ron gets my share when I die. You should know better than to question his business acumen. He's forgotten more than you'll ever know, stated Bonnie angrily, as she stood and placed a bill on the table to cover her mostly uneaten lunch. She then looked Dan in the eye. Please don't try stealing that too. Bonnie answered her doorbell almost a month later to find Ron standing on her stoop. She was very surprised. Ron had studiously avoided her since the morning after she had returned from her ill-fated conference. Ron, come in, is everything okay? Casey just left a few minutes ago if you're looking for her, stated Bonnie as she marveled at how flustered being with Ron now made her. I came to talk to you, if you have the time, began Ron as he stepped inside what had been his home for over 15 years. Can you spare a few minutes? If you're busy, I'll try another time. I'm not busy, replied Bonnie quickly. I just made some coffee. Why don't we sit in the kitchen? I appreciate you seeing me on such short notice, said Ron as he lifted his coffee mug. You always made great coffee. I didn't even know how to make coffee when we were first married, replied Bonnie with a chuckle. It took some time for me to get it right. I didn't marry you for the coffee, retorted Ron. You had other qualities I found much more appealing. I never heard you call them qualities before, stated Bonnie, still smiling. I did hear you refer to them as other things a few times. Yeah, you brought out the best in me and I was helpless to resist you, admitted Ron. Patty must have had you wrapped around her finger or some body part, observed Bonnie. She certainly has her own charm. I appreciate how well you treated Patty. She thinks you're a remarkable person. Her opinion of you is one reason I'm here. One of her friends overheard you and Dan at lunch a couple of weeks back. Patty told me about it before she headed for the left coast. She felt your loyalty and integrity were exceptional. I have to agree. After the way I treated you in the divorce, you still turned Dan down flat. A lot of women who had been so quickly divorced by their husband would have wanted revenge, or payback at least. I'd never do that to you, Ron. I know how hard you work on your projects and how much they mean to you. I also know you'll make that land yield a much better return than Dan was looking for. He was foolish to doubt you, concluded Bonnie. I appreciate your vote of confidence. Patty helped me to accept that you're my partner, even though I've been running the business as if it's all mine. I need to allow you the opportunity to express your opinion and to tell me how you'd like to proceed, stated Ron. If you want to sell that property and split the profits on it, I'll go along with it. Dan's been after me to sell it, revealed Ron. I think he's strapped for cash. He feels we should each be able to draw $500,000 out of the business without hamstringing it if we sold that land. Would you want that too? I think you probably have plans for that property which would net the company a nice profit and community goodwill, replied Bonnie with obvious pride. You never looked for a quick profit. You always wanted to improve the area while making a good living. You have something planned for that tract, don't you? I've been negotiating a long-term lease with General Hospital to build an emergency care complex on the land, confessed Ron. It wouldn't be as profitable as the luxury condo project the company Dan is pushing to build, but it would still turn a nice profit, and we'd also have the contract to build it. That would create jobs as well as goodwill. I guessed it would be something like that, responded Bonnie a bit smugly. You're a good businessman, but you're also invested in the community. That separates you from men like Dan. Dan feels it would be better to get the quick profit. I don't agree with that line of thought. I understand he came to you to pitch his ideas and you turned him down cold. I trust you implicitly, Ron. You've never given me reason not to trust you. I'll back your decisions regarding the business to the hilt, promised Bonnie. I guess that sounds strange when you already know you can't trust me, but it's the truth. I've been thinking about how Dan has been trying to interfere in your business. It's occurred to me that we should buy him out. If he's cash poor, he'll probably listen to a reasonable offer. He'd be happy, and you'd be free to run your business the way you see fit, reasoned Bonnie. I thought of that, but I don't have the capital to accomplish it, conceded Ron. We could sell this house, suggested Bonnie. I can rent a nice 2-bedroom apartment for Casey and me. We've built a lot of equity up over the years. The house is almost paid for, and you made some major improvements. It would bring enough for us to be able to buy out Dan. This is your house now that we're divorced. You'd be willing to sell it and put that money into the business? Asked a disbelieving Ron. I don't know how soon I'll make the deal for the urgent care center. I can't guarantee you'll get your money back soon, or even that you'll get it back at all. Do I look worried? Joked Bonnie. Remember, I was married to you for 20 years. You'll make it back with interest. If for some reason you don't, that's okay. I owe you, Ron. The money couldn't ever make up for my disrespect, but it will get Dan out of your hair. I'll go along with it if you'll come and live at the lake house with Casey and me, blurted Ron, before quickly adding, you'll have your own room with its own bath. It really turned out nice. I don't think that would work, replied Bonnie sadly. There's the privacy issue, not to mention dating and all the drama that would create for you. I'm sorry. I didn't think about your social life, apologized Ron. Of course you wouldn't want to bring a date back to the house when the ex-husband is living there. That would be awkward. I don't date and have no intention of starting, replied Bonnie. I stopped going to the conferences and haven't spoken to Nick since that disastrous trip. You're the one who would be inconvenienced. No woman would want to spend the night with you when your ex is sleeping in the next room. Finding a woman willing to move in with you would be extremely unlikely with me there, although I wouldn't rule it out. I've seen how women fall all over you. I divorced you for being unfaithful, and then I went and moved Patty in with me. My conduct wasn't the best example for Casey, was it? Asked Ron rhetorically. My only defense is that I was depressed and lonely. Another man had taken my wife from me and my self-confidence was pretty low. Patty was able to restore it for me. I'm sorry I damaged your self-esteem. I wish it had never happened, but I certainly don't blame you for taking up with Patty. She's a lovely woman. You're a single man and can enter into any relationship you desire, said Bonnie before adding, I don't think I ever apologized properly for my behavior. It wasn't something you caused or created. It was all on me. I really made a mess of things, and I'm truly sorry for the pain and inconvenience I caused. You really hurt me, Bonnie. I was never unfaithful. I lived for you and Casey. I went from having it all to feeling like a complete failure, admitted Ron. Patty helped me see that while I may not have been the perfect husband, I wasn't the reason you strayed. You could have told me you were unhappy with our marriage or whatever. I would have worked to make it better if I had known. I was just stupid, Ron, not unhappy. You were a very good husband, a great dad for Casey, and a wonderful partner, stated Bonnie. I lost my way and I deserve to be unhappy. It sounds strange, but being unhappy makes me feel like I'm paying for my sins. Would you at least come and look at the lake house? Asked Ron. I'd like to show it to you and get your opinion. I used some of the ideas we discussed over the years on remodeling. I think you'll approve. Casey has a volleyball match in 2 hours. Can I take a rain check on that offer? Asked Bonnie. Let's look at it before the match. We can ride there together, proposed Ron. I'll drop you off here afterward. Aren't you worried people will think we're getting back together if we go as a couple? Usually, you sit as far from me as possible, pointed out Bonnie. Yeah, I've been a bit difficult, but in my defense, you treated me poorly and hurt our marriage. You couldn't have expected me to be cordial to you, reasoned Ron. Actually, you were much nicer to me than I would have been to you if the tables had been reversed, admitted Bonnie. Your settlement offer was far too generous. We both know that. It looks like that kindness is paying off, quipped Ron. We're thinking of selling the house so we can buy out Dan. I'm still having trouble believing you're willing to do that. Honestly, Ron, you can have anything of mine you want. You've always been a fair man. I know you won't hurt me, even though I deserve it. Let me show you the lake house, offered Ron to change the subject and give himself time to settle his emotions. Bonnie raved about the remodeling as Ron showed her through the house. You really did a great job. Casey's room is so big and she has her own bath. That's every teenage girl's dream. When Ron showed Bonnie the second bedroom, Bonnie felt it was time to address the elephant in the room. This is a beautiful room with another amazing bathroom, but I can't stay here, Ron. It would be far too painful to see you every day and be reminded of what I lost. We'll sell the house and I'll get an apartment. I'll be fine. We have to leave soon for Casey's match. Let me show you the master bedroom, persuaded Ron. It's bigger than the others. I know you'll like it. This is beautiful. You did a wonderful job, but you always do, praised Bonnie as she surveyed the master bedroom. That's why your business is so successful. You have an eye for detail. Would you stay with Casey and me if you had this room? Asked Ron abruptly. I'd still see you every day and I don't think I could handle that, stated Bonnie sadly. I didn't mean you'd have it to yourself, explained Ron nervously. I thought maybe we could share it. Bonnie raised her eyebrows as she studied Ron's face. Are you asking me to share your bed? I've felt terrible since that day I found out you cheated and I left home. I miss you so much I ache at times. You messed up pretty badly, but I slept with Patty for several months. That took some of the sting out of your betrayal but doesn't absolve it. I wonder if we can get past all the challenges and try getting back together. I'm not willing to be an option for you, replied Bonnie firmly. If you want to punish me more, I won't do it. If I moved in, I'd be totally faithful to you and would expect the same from you. No more young women in your bed. There would be only me or I'd be gone in a heartbeat. I've worked hard on getting my self-respect back. I intend to keep it. I love you, Ron. But you have to be all in, or I'm out. No one was more surprised than Casey when her parents walked into the gym arm in arm. She hurried over to speak to them where no one else could hear. Mom, Dad, does this mean... began Casey, but Ron smiled and nodded before she could finish her question. Casey threw her arms around her mother and hugged her tightly while speaking into her ear. Welcome home, Mom. I love you, but don't ever cheat on Dad again. I have a friend with a single aunt who's even prettier than Patty.